Comments and opinions expressed on Writers in Focus are those of the individual participants and are presented for the purpose of discussion only. No endorsements by Atlanta Fulton Public Library System or Fulton County government are intended, and none should be presumed. Hi, welcome to Writers in Focus. I'm your host, James Taylor, and today I'm delighted to have a publishing phenomenon as my guest. His name is Danny Kofke. May I call you Danny?
Absolutely.
I'd like to welcome you to the Atlanta Fulton Public Library and the Fulton County Government Center. We're here to talk about your book, A Simple Book of Financial Wisdom. Teach yourself and your kids how to live wealthy with little money. By way of introduction, if I have this wrong, just interrupt me, Danny.
Okay.
You're a special ed teacher here in Atlanta.
Jackson County.
In
just
Jackson County.
So near Atlanta.
Your love of teaching and finances led you to write several years ago a small book called How to Survive on a Teacher's Salary. This caught the attention of a number of people, and you said, let me distill this information, put it in a new book. That's the book we're going to talk about, A Simple Book of Financial Wisdom. It's a small book. It's less than 100 pages. Now, bear with me. It's published by a tiny publishing firm, Wyatt Mackenzie Press, in Deadwood, Oregon. Your message has been broadcast on CNN, the 700 Club. You've been on ABC. You've been on Fox. You've been on MSNBC. You've been on the Clark Howard Show. That's just television. This book has gotten you interviews on over 200 radio stations and a score of newspapers, including the AJC, the Wall Street Journal, and even the Huffington Post. So I'm saying to myself, Danny, my God, I've got to read this book. And I did. It's less than 100 pages. It's heartfelt financial wisdom. And I came away from it saying, why hasn't anybody written this before? I'll begin with a question that Clark Howard told you a couple of years ago. He said, Danny, you're saying you can raise a family of 4 on less than $40,000. He said it's financially impossible.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, we did
here.
it. I'm here. We're still alive. My kids are alive. My wife's alive.
Yeah,
so yes, we have done it. Not easy. Absolutely not. And we don't take exotic vacations all the time. We don't drive brand new cars. We don't live in a 5,000 square foot home. But it can be done. And I think I'm living proof that we did it.
I want to set up the situation. You wrote the previous book, How to Survive on a Teacher's Salary, I think before the recession hit. Yes.
Okay. And I mean, obviously, people watching your show, they kind of know things about the publishing industry. But I started that book in 2005.
Right.
Didn't come out until towards the end of 2007. And that was our story. And in 2005, we had our first daughter, Ava, in 2004. And up until that point, my wife, Tracy, was a school teacher along with myself. And we lived like, we were weird then. We were frugal before frugal was cool. We lived off of one paycheck. This was in the times where people were expecting 10% raises every year, home prices going up. So we were different. And I had colleagues say, gosh, you guys are really doing a good job with your money. You should write a book to help us out. And I finally, after a couple of years, I didn't give it too much thought, but then one weekend, Tracy and Ava were out of town, and I think God just put an image in my head, sit down, and I just started it. And over the next few months, I completed it. And when I was done, I had no intentions on getting it published, knew nothing about the publishing industry, gave it to a few family members and friends to read, and someone said, why don't you try to get it published? Did a little research, saw to get with a major publishing house, you had to have a literary agent, and I didn't want to go that route, so I submitted it to a tape publishing company, and I had to pay an upfront fee to have it published. There were some ways for me to get that money back, and I have, but through a lot of hard work and marketing myself. But that was kind of our story, Tracy and my story, on how we got to the point where Tracy was able to stay at home and at that time raise one daughter. Well, then fast forward to 2010, Christmas break of 2010, just another image came in my head. I thought, gosh, now we've added another daughter to the mix, still living off a teacher's salary. Tracy's been able to stay at home. We have no debt except our mortgage. We invest each month for our retirement, have an emergency fund in place. But most importantly, we, I think, live wealthy on little money because I get to go to a job that I enjoy most days and I am passionate about. And Tracy got to stay at home, which is something that she loves to do. And despite not making a large salary, we were able to have some financial success. And so many people are struggling then, right now. And I just wanted a message not just geared towards teachers. My first book, obviously the target audience was teachers. I thought it could benefit some others, but our story is unique. We were able to live overseas. We did things, and everyone has an individual story, so we took steps that maybe not other people would be able to do. I wanted a book that I could say, you know what, no matter what position you're in, whether it's you're a CEO, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a firefighter, teacher, nurse, whatever, here are some specific financial tips that you can use. And I did. You made a point to say that the book is short. I wanted it that way because right now so many people are so confused about money issues and they're afraid. And if you write this 250-page, 300-page book with a lot of financial jargon in it, most people are going to put it down and say, gosh, I can't get through this. It's so confusing. And I want my book to be a stepping stone. Yes, you can learn a lot from it, I think, but I also want it to pique your interest and just say, gosh, I can do this. It doesn't have to be that hard. And then you continue that education lifelong about learning about money and how to handle it properly.
Before we start off we're going to talk about at least 7 items, beginning with track your expenses and live a wealthy life with little money. But I want to talk about Danny Kofke for a minute. Okay. As a librarian, I've worked in several large libraries where there are walls of books on finances. I mean, Susie Orman and people like that. These people generally make a lot of money. Donald Trump will tell you how to make a lot of money. Live wise, live wealthy, and so on like that. I think you're the only author I've ever come across that says, this is how much money I spend a year. And I told you before the interview, my parents never talked about money. I was raised to believe that in polite company, you don't talk about money. And yet you're saying, I make $39,700, my wife dropped. Was that a barrier that you had to go through before writing this?
Not really.
What does your parents think?
Yeah, well, you know, and I think that's where my message has resonated, and I have been able to be on media because I'm not Susie Orman. I don't get paid $80,000 for doing a speech. One day, hopefully, I will. But I think people can relate to me and say, gosh, this guy walks the walk. I'm a school teacher. Right now, I make a little above $43,000 a year. That's it. So I hope to inspire people to show them that, yes, if I can do it, then you can do it too. Yes, you might have to make some changes. Yes, you may have to cut back on doing certain things, but you can be done. And I think that's the empowering part, that it doesn't take a 4-year economics degree to balance your personal budget. It doesn't, and so many people make financial matters so difficult to understand, and then people, they compound them and they think, gosh, I can't do this, I can't do this. And when we don't talk about it as families, it makes the problem even worse, I think. So that's where I feel open and honest. It's just so key because, and even with my children, 8 and 5, we're open with them.
That's my next question.
We look at the Occupy movement now, no matter which way you look at it, a lot of those people are there because they say, gosh, I have $100,000 in student loan debt, I majored in English literature, and now I'm a barista at Starbucks, and I can't get paid, and I have all this debt. Well, that to me is part of the reason, is because parents neglected to talk to their children about finances. Because as a school teacher, I will tell parents out there, we don't do a good job teaching financial literacy to kids. It doesn't happen in the schools. I think it's a crying shame. I think it should be done, but it isn't. So saying that, it's up to the parents to discuss that, unless they want their child to make the same mistakes that so many people have made right now. So that's where I just feel, just be open and honest with your kids and just explain to them. Now, if you're going through foreclosure or facing some crisis, you may not want to burden your young kids, because that's not really fair to them. You want to make sure that they know you're safe. But, you know, telling them no sometimes. I mean, my daughter waited 3 years for a Nintendo DS. She really wanted it, but we said, no, we don't have it. We have an emergency fund, but that isn't an emergency fund. So we just explain it and open and honest with them. And I actually think at the end of the day, they have more respect for us. And when we do little things, we could go out to eat at fast food and they thank us and they think, gosh, that was so nice of you, Mom and Dad, to do that, because it's not a given. We live in an entitlement culture a lot of times, especially with our kids. I see it as a school teacher, and it's give me, give me, give me. So when you do say no sometimes, especially when you can't afford it, instead of living this false life, be honest and just say, no, this is what we make. This is what the bills have to, you know, the money I go towards, these are the bills I need to pay. And I think your kids will respect you at the end of the day.
You begin the book, Danny, with a brief discussion. And one of the, folks, it's less than 100 pages. That's why I love the book. You can read it in 20 minutes, 30 minutes and go, wow, I know a lot about finances. But you're a teacher. And so you use a lot of empirical studies. One came out by a guy named Kahneman a few years ago, and you quote him, money, happiness, and money. Let's put that on the table right now. The relationship between happiness and how much money go ahead.
Right, and there's a lot of people that say money buys happiness, and I'll tell you, it can't hurt, and it takes away a lot of worries, but you probably know someone, I know someone that is filthy rich, but miserable,
sure,
not wealthy
sure.
at all, whereas there's other people that don't make a large income, but they're some of the happiest people
But there are
you've
some
ever met.
empirical psychological studies.
Yes,
that
yes.
After
And this was
75,
done, right.
talk about that. Yeah.
Huge study done by 2 psychologists,
Yeah, yeah.
university professors, and they did a huge poll and just said that $75,000 a year is the magic formula for happiness. Now, granted, someone that makes $375,000 a year compared to someone making $75K, they may have more in their day-to-day lives and they may be able to buy more, take nicer vacations, but the ultimate satisfaction, happiness deep down inside doesn't change. And I think it was just so important to look at that. And then in conjunction with that study, I looked at the top 10 most satisfying jobs, and you can do some research on that. But I think 9 out of 10 of them, the salary was under $75K a year. But some of those jobs...
They're not real estate moguls. They're not.
You were teachers.
They're not
you
CEOs.
were principals. Right.
Right.
When you're in a job that you get into first and foremost because of the passion, and I think most would agree,
Yeah,
teachers, firefighters, nurses.
Right.
Granted, it's hard to complain right now because so many people are struggling. They say, gosh, I wish I made what a teacher made. But I think most would agree that, say, a police officer, they're not pulling people over and risking life and death every time they pull a car over for the 60 grand a year or whatever they're making. They have to have a passion first in order to get into that career. And I think that's where the study kind of opened my eyes. It just showed that if you do have a job that's satisfying, if you're doing something in life that has meaning, then a lot of times you don't need those materialistic things to give you that false sense of happiness, because then that's a vicious cycle.
I'm going to sound like a moron right now, but after having read your book, I took my wife out for dinner. Well, I try to cut costs by not going out to dinner. I go to lunch and get the same
There you
food.
go.
Okay.
Right.
And so the bill was like $35,
Okay.
and I had $60 in cash. And I said to myself, boy, that's a lot of money for lunch. I don't want to pay cash for this, so I put it on my credit card. And I'm going, didn't Danny write about this? I mean, could you? People have people treasure their cash, but they use their plastic, and it's like so simple to realize. And yet, here I am. I'm fairly intelligent, and I was making that mistake myself.
Well, it's the emotional impact. Most of us, we have an emotional we have contact with the cash that we earn. We know how much
Don't want to
we've
part
worked.
with that.
We know how much sweat went into earning that.
Yeah.
Swiping a piece of plastic through a machine is pretty easy. And in fact, I think that's what's kind of created this whole downfall. Gosh, I guess like 20, 25 years ago is when credit cards really started to become popular, and there was a way for someone in the middle class to move up automatically, and it was false. All you had to do was swipe this piece of plastic, and then you know what? If you're too far in debt, you can just file bankruptcy and your credit shot for a while, but it allowed you to not take the same steps that some other people made, but to live up to their lifestyle. So it's just so, using cash to me is such an important element of getting a hold of your finances, because the emotional attachment. And most of us, just mentioned that study, most of us, the reason I feel like a lot of people are in trouble financially is because of the emotions. I don't feel the numbers are that hard to do. Let's say a credit card, for instance. Let's just say credit card, 24% interest. We'll say you put $100 on the credit card. You don't make a payment all year. At the end of the year, how much are you going to owe? 24% of 100, $24, $124. 9th, 10th grade math, so not hard. Yet thousands and thousands of people are in credit card debt right now. They buy things knowing full well they can't afford them. They don't have the money. In your case, it was different. You did have the money so you could pay it, but a lot of people don't, and they just do that. And I feel it's because they're lacking something in their lives, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, with their spouse and their jobs, whatever. They buy something to fuel that unhappiness, and it feels good. Absolutely. If you go out and buy new shoes, a new shirt, it feels good the first 5 or 6 times you wear it. But after 6 or 7 times, that feeling of newness goes away and that item becomes old. And if you're basing your sense of happiness on a materialistic item, man, you can just see the vicious cycle that you're in, that you're constantly having to buy things to fuel that unhappiness.
In less than 100 pages, you've got pearls of wisdom, and one of which is, and this is going to sound simple, okay? You know the author Gore Vidal. He can be very cynical and salacious, but one time he said in an interview, the 2 most important things in life are probably sex and money. Those are the 2 things that are never taught in school.
Right.
You begin your book by saying, track your expenses, and you give a little flow chart.
Right.
And I'm realizing to myself, like, I know how much I make. I really don't know how much I spend. And it's like if at the end of the month when I do everything, hey, this is great, but it's not supposed to be that way, is it?
No, and I think...
And how many people do that?
Not many.
People don't realize what they spend.
No, a lot of people will come up to me when they ask for some financial advice. They'll say, I just don't have any money to make ends meet. Yet they have a new iPhone. They have a new Coach bag. They have this, that. And I say, well, you do have money. You're just choosing to spend it in this way. So that to me is probably the most important thing, or one of the most important things you can do is track where your money is going. And what worked well for my wife and myself, shortly after we got married, we walked around with a piece of paper and a pencil for 1 month and we wrote down everything we spent. I could give some general tips. The latte factor, don't buy coffee out, vending machines, but that isn't personal. Not everyone does that. But when you track your own spending, you write it down. The numbers don't lie. It's your handwriting. And then at the end of the month, you can say, oh my gosh, we went to the movies 3 times, or we did this. And just to show how fast little things add up. Let's just say during the work week, and you mentioned going out for lunch. We're going to keep it cheaper than that. Let's say Monday through Friday, you go out for lunch. Fast food, we'll say $5 a pop. You're not going to miss $5. You probably won't even think twice about it. But when you add that up, $5 a day during the work week is $25 a week, which totals $100 a month, which is $1,300 a year when you add it all up. $1,300 is a lot of money for most of us. So that to me is so important, is just track how you're spending your money, because there's 2 ways to make more money. Either A, have to get a higher paying job, which it is possible, but let's face it, it's a little more difficult for many of us right now than it was 5 or 6 years ago. And that leaves option B, where we cut back on where we're spending our money, which puts more money back into the bank account.
You have a lot of wisdom in the book that people will say, oh yeah, I know this. And so one of the things that I like about the book is that you make compelling arguments to follow the advice given there. There's a bit of advice there that's, to me, totally counterintuitive, but after reflection makes perfect sense. You talk about paying off your debt, your credit cards, and I'll let you handle this, but say you have a $20,000 in credit cards, $100,000 in mortgage, and $1,000 and $500 in various other sundry loans, credits, and stuff like that. Common wisdom says pay off the big one. You say pay off the small one first. How come?
Right. Well, and I use kind of the approach. It's the Dave Ramsey approach. If people have heard of him, I mean, it's just there's different rules. You're going to
be there, my friend.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hopefully one day. But the thing is, emotions. Here's where the emotions take effect. If we have it, absolutely from a mathematical point of view, if you had, say, $15,000 and you're paying 24% on that, if you had a $500 loan and you're paying 10%, mathematically, absolutely makes sense to pay off that $15,000 loan first. But the math didn't get us into trouble. It was the emotions. How long is it going to take to pay off that $15,000 debt? A long, long time. We need to get some confidence in ourselves, many of us, because we feel failure with money. We don't think we can do it. We say, gosh, there's no way I'll ever be able to be in control of my money. So when we set it up in order from least to greatest, we tackle the debt that has the least amount first. And in this case, let's just say you had a $500 Visa card, $1,000 MasterCard. We're going to say, just to make the math easy, we'll say the minimum payment is $50 on the $500 card, which it wouldn't be, $100 on the $1,000 card, just for math purposes. The way we do it is that $1,000 loan, we continue to make the minimum monthly payment of $100 a month. So you just do that. Now with that $500 card, that's the least amount we owe, so we want to pay that off as fast as possible. We've been making a $50 payment on it. Let's find a way to come up with another $50 a month. You may have to cut back on your satellite for a year, besides watching this show. You may have to do without eating out, whatever. But let's just say we're able to come up with $100 a month. Well, doing the math, you do $100 a month, 5 months later, that debt is gone. Now we have $100 extra. We're not going to blow it. We're going to add it to the next debt. So we've been paying $100 a month on the $1,000 card. We add this other $100 to it. Now we're paying $200 on that $1,000 debt. 5 months later, that debt's gone, and we just keep moving up, because what happens is we feel motivated. It's very similar to a diet. If I have to lose 50 pounds, I'm not going to lose that in a month. And I shouldn't. That wouldn't be healthy. But if I lose 2 pounds this week, 3 pounds next week, I'm going to feel motivated. I'm going to say, gosh, I can do this. The same thing with money. You pay off that first debt, you're like, gosh, this isn't so hard. I can do this. Then you pay off that next debt, you're like, wow, I'm really in the groove. And then you just want to keep going on and on. If you started with that $15,000 debt first, man, it would take a long, long time. And then something's going to happen. Your car's going to break down, the roof. Something will probably happen. Murphy's Law. And then you're just going to throw you in a tailspin. You're going to say, gosh, I knew I couldn't do it.
Speaking of which, let me segue into this. Another pearl of wisdom from the book. My parents always used to say, like, save for a rainy day. You're saying save for a rainy day and have an emergency fund. What's the difference? Even on $40,000 a year, are you telling me that you and your wife have a savings account and an emergency fund?
It's kind of both together.
Okay, but explain the difference, which is good to know.
Well, a savings account, you could do that just for saving, maybe up for basic things. If you're planning on buying a TV in a year or vacation, summer vacation.
Well, let me differentiate between an investment account and an emergency account.
All right. An emergency account is exactly what it sounds like. Emergencies. your roof goes, your car needs a new battery, you
Instant
need new
money.
tires.
You take it out without penalty.
Instead of putting on a credit card, paying 24% interest a year on, you have the cash to do it. And the good thing about using cash right now, gosh, times are tough. So say you need 4 new tires on your car. If you go in with cash as opposed to credit, a lot of times you can negotiate too and get it down to a more reasonable price. So that's an emergency fund, emergency only. Now an investment account, that is money for retirement. Now for me, I'm 36, so that's 30 years down the road. If you're close to retirement, then obviously you're going to want it, sooner than that. But that is money for the long term. Right now the stocks, it's a roller coaster, and that's the way it usually goes. But we don't worry about that. I don't want this money for another 30 years. Now my emergency fund, that is money that needs to be safe. I'm not investing that because let's just say tomorrow I need new brakes on my car. I don't want to have to worry about the stock market going up and down to get that money. That would be in a bank, and I know they're earning next to nothing, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We don't want it to earn money. Our investments are supposed to earn money. The emergency is there for those emergencies.
I told you before the interview, Danny, that I was raised, I think, like so many other Americans, where my parents said, don't ever talk about money, even in front of your friends or relatives or anything like that.
Right.
But there's a tiny chapter in the book, a paragraph in the book that brought tears to my eyes. You're teaching your 2 daughters about money already.
Yes.
And they have 3 jars. And one of the jar that you give them an allowance, and one of the jar is this, one of the jar is that. And would you explain the 3 jars?
Yes, and we started.
It's so beautiful.
And it's easy. I mean, that's the cool thing. We started when they were both 3. Well, now one's 5 and one's 8. But when they both turned 3, and I'll tell you right now, before I say, I'm not a big fan of paying people for things they should be doing, but I made an exception here. When they were 3, I said, okay, cleaning your room, picking up your toys, and you could get $1 a week if you did that every day, so not a lot of money. And at the end of the week, we had 3 jars, one labeled giveaway, one labeled savings, and one labeled spending. Upon getting paid, they would first put 10% or a dime in the giveaway jar, 25% or a quarter in the savings jar.
What's the giveaway?
And the rest in the spending jar.
What's the giveaway jar?
The giveaway jar, what we use that for, numerous things. One time, my oldest daughter, Ava, there was a little girl at my school who lost her father before Christmas. Ava used that money and bought her a teddy bear and brought it to school.
You're teaching your children how to give, which is so moving to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because especially growing up in a frugal household like we are, we don't have as many things as their friends do. And they see that, especially now 5 and 8, they do see more of that. But I always try to instill in them, there's always going to be people that have more than you, but there's also a lot of people that have a lot less than you. So that's kind of what I want to instill with that, and just have a giving heart. And just think, if we did that growing up, gave away 10% first, saved 25%, then spent the rest, we wouldn't be in this financial mess that we're in right now, because it's just as easy as that. But then you can work it up, talking about your kids. Once my oldest daughter turned 6, I upped the ante a little bit, and I said, these things that you've been doing are now expected of you, but I'm going to give you a 50% raise, or a 50% raise. I'm going to give you $1.50 a week. But every Sunday, I need you to gather the garbage around the house, and you also need to clean your bathroom. And my wife showed her how to scrub the toilet and wash the mirrors, and she did that. And what I'm trying to teach now is, if you go above and beyond, because most 6-year-olds probably are not scrubbing their toilets, but if you do that in life, go above and beyond what other people are doing, usually you are rewarded and you're compensated for that. So little things like that I think is, if we're open and honest with our kids, we can teach these valuable lessons. And I know the conversation 10 years from now with 2 teenage daughters might be a little difficult and different than what I'm saying now, but hopefully I'm laying the foundation right now and just opening their eyes at this point while they're young, so they do remember it when they get into those teenage years and young adult years.
Tough question. You've had a chance to, CNN, 700 Club, ABC, Fox, the Clark Howard Show, everything. I'm sure you've had a chance to reflect on, why is my message resonating so profoundly with the American public? It just can't be the recession.
Right.
What do you think? You've touched a nerve in me.
Right. Well, I think because I'm an everyday person, I walk the walk. Most people can relate to a school teacher. I'm not this high executive of a company that most of us say, gosh, yeah, if I made $500,000 a year, I could do that too and do well with money. Well, here I am. I make a similar salary to you. So almost in a way, not trying to say there's no excuses, but here's someone that has done it. Now you can do it, and you can learn how to do it. And I guess just the barriers are kind of put down a little bit. It's not like I am Dave Ramsey or Clark Howard right now, who has TV shows and radio shows and things. I'm a school teacher. That's my day job. One day I hope to be that high, but as of right now, I'm not. So I think that's where my message resonates a little bit. Most people know a school teacher, so they can relate to them, and I think that's where it comes across.
There's a tiny paragraph in your book, Danny, where you say, we don't need 2 cars, and I need 1 car to get to work. But wait a second, my wife needs this car to do that. I live not too far from the school where I teach. I'm going to ride a bicycle. And you said your neighbors were making fun of you. No,
Right.
the neighbors out there, good folk, but they were making fun of you.
Right. Right. And this was
They aren't laughing now.
no, and this were when times were good. When we talked about in the
Right,
early
right,
2000s,
right.
when we planned ahead, we had a plan. That's another element
Yeah.
of a good financial to obtain freedom is have that plan. And people were laughing at me. Get off your wallet, spend
Yeah.
some money. But we had a plan in place.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've got a couple of bucks, go out and buy this book. It's called A Simple Book of Financial Wisdom. Teach yourself and your kids how to live a wealthy life with little money. I've been talking to Danny Kofke. He's got a wonderful website. Just Google Danny Kofke, Kofke, and you'll find the blog and your website. Remarkable story, remarkable man, remarkable book. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you.
God, that was fun. That was fun. And that's it. Comments and opinions expressed on Writers in Focus are those of the individual participants and are presented for the purpose of discussion only. No endorsements by Atlanta Fulton Public Library System or Fulton County government are intended, and none should be presumed.